Community-centered, community-supported. Alaska Public Media. Alaska Insight is supported in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by viewers just like you. Thank you.
Anchorage skier Gus Schumacher made history with a World Cup win in Minneapolis recently.
I just really love doing it with these guys, and I hope this is the first of many, and yeah, this has been a great season. Thanks everybody for coming. This has been the best day ever.
It was the first cross-country World Cup event on U.S. soil in 20 years. What would it take to bring a World Cup to Anchorage? We'll discuss the potential right now on Alaska Insight. There's a lot of excitement over Gus Schumacher's win in Minnesota, and rightly so. Schumacher is only 23 years old, and he is the first American male cross-country skier to take a Distance World Cup title in more than 40 years. We'll hear more about his victory and discuss what it would take to bring a World Cup competition to Anchorage. Before we get to that discussion, here are some of the top stories of the week from Alaska Public Media's collaborative statewide news network. Governor Mike Dunleavy is threatening to veto a bipartisan education bill that passed the House and Senate by overwhelming margins in February unless lawmakers quickly pass additional legislation addressing his priorities. The bill, Senate Bill 140, includes several provisions including increasing the state's per-student funding formula as well as creating a new education department position tasked with assisting charter schools. However, two provisions backed by the governor, a new direct state approval process for charter schools, and a 3-year program to provide annual retention bonuses to teachers, were left out. Dunleavy must act on the bill by March 14th, or it becomes law without his signature. A 16-year-old, Guy Nushakpuk, has been charged with killing 2 adults and wounding 2 others during a shooting Sunday night in Point Hope. According to charging documents filed Monday, Borough Police responded just after 11:30 p.m. Sunday night to a report of a shooting at a residence. Officers found 4 gunshot victims, a dead man and woman, along with 2 severely wounded men. Roughly 10 minutes after the shooting, prosecutors say Nushakpuk's father brought him to the Point Hope police station where he allegedly confessed to the shooting during an interview with his parents present. In court on Tuesday, he pleaded not guilty. The Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race Committee Board voted last week to disqualify former champion Brent Sass from this year's event following accusations he sexually assaulted multiple women. The decision came nearly 4 months after the race received a letter from an official at Planned Parenthood Alliance Advocates Alaska on behalf of women who had accused Sass of sexual assault. The unanimous vote also came a week after Alaska Public Media, the Anchorage Daily News, and ProPublica first asked about sexual assault allegations against Sass. In an interview prior to the disqualification, Sass denied the accusations. He did not respond to requests for comment after the announcement. You can find the full versions of these and many more stories on our website, alaskapublic.org, or by downloading the Alaska Public Media app on your phone. Now on to our discussion for this evening. In February, Anchorage skier Gus Schumacher won a cross-country ski race at the first World Cup event on U.S. soil in 2 decades. At 23, Schumacher is the youngest American ever to win a World Cup Nordic skiing event and one of only a handful of American men who have stood at the top of a World Cup podium. We're going to see clips from Schumacher's race in Minnesota with commentary from Outside Watch's D.C. Otkin and Ryan Cedarquist, and we'll see part of an interview we recorded earlier this week with Gus.
4.4 seconds off of Schumacher. And look at the face of Schumacher there. Look at the emotions start to set in as he is realizing that he's probably going to walk away with the win today here in Minneapolis.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at some of the list of World Cup winners. Noah Hoffman's won a World Cup. Simi Hamilton's won a World Cup. Bill Koch has won a World Cup for the American men. The list is short, DC. So Gus Schumacher, he would become the 4th American male to win a World Cup, defending world champion, finishing 7th. And now the Americans are they are seeing that this is going to happen. Unbelievable. And the crowd is erupting right now, not for Goldberg. They know Schumacher has just won this. It's going to be 2 Norwegians on the podium and an American.
The Minneapolis Miracle is a reality for Schumacher. Schumacher, I mean, he looks like he's in shock right now still, Ryan.
Oh, for sure. This is the biggest moment of his career in terms of breakthroughs. This is a breakthrough. When he won that World Junior medal, that was a huge breakthrough too. As, hey, we can compete with the rest of the world. We can compete with the Norwegians and the Swedes.
And your winner of the men's 10K interval free start event from the United States of America, Gus Schumacher.
Well, I am so happy to have you on with us, Gus Schumacher. It's fantastic that, congratulations on the Birkie and the World Cup win. It's great that you could take a little time. I'm sure you're super busy, so it's awesome that we have a moment to talk to you. Tell us, Gus, what was it like racing a World Cup event on U.S. soil for the first time in your career?
It was really crazy. Yeah, like you could tell everyone was so happy to be there and excited to be doing a World Cup in the US for the first time in a long time. Like everyone, all the skiers in the US feel like it's such a European thing, and to have it come home and feel the excitement was really, really cool.
I can't imagine the excitement that was there. The race you won in Minneapolis wasn't it wasn't a mass start, so it wasn't clearly obvious that you'd won once you finished. Talk about what it was like realizing that you were going to have the fastest time when you finally realized that.
Yeah, it was really an interesting like progression, because it was like I finished and I thought it would be good for a top 10, which is sweet for me, and then there weren't too many people left on course, so I was like, this could be a podium. And then when my friends were like, they were right next to me and they were the ones that were like pointing out like, dude, you could win this. And that was when I was just like, kind of couldn't say anything, just sort of breathless, like realizing like what was going on. And yeah, that was really crazy.
In terms of the energy out on the course, how much different did it feel than a typical European race?
It was electric. It was so much better than any race I've ever done. Some of the European races are loud. Some of them are quiet, depending on where they are. Some of these towns are pretty small and are not necessarily have a lot of ski fans. So like to be in Minneapolis with that many thousands of fans that all like are into skiing and excited to have the race there for the first time in 20 years. No one remembers the last time it was there. Or last time it was in the US even. And yeah, you could tell people were just psyched to watch skiing and be there like all of us were.
Yeah, following up on that, in the post-race interview, you said the fans coordinated in a USA chant. How much of a difference does that make, and did that make for your skiing? I think you said you couldn't feel your body.
Yeah, it was really crazy. I couldn't hear my breath either. I couldn't hear the coaches. It was, yeah, it's a super, like, yeah, feeling I haven't had on skis before, just like ever in life. And I don't know how much it changed the actual race. Like maybe I was just having a good day without that, but it's hard to believe that that didn't affect my last kilometer or two.
Yeah, that energy really helps. How much would it mean for you, Gus, to have a future World Cup race in Anchorage?
It would, yeah, I've thought about this a little bit. It would mean a ton just to like have that impact. Like I could see the impact that that had on all the like kids and just everyone that's into skiing in that area. And obviously a lot of Alaskans were there too. It was a really big event. But for kids, Alaska kids, to see that, to just be able to see that without having to fly somewhere and see it on their home trails, I think would be really powerful.
Really powerful indeed. Joining me tonight to discuss the potential of holding a World Cup race in Anchorage is Alaskan and Olympian Kikkan Randall. Kikkan certainly knows what it takes to win in international competitions. She is a 5-time Olympian. She's had 13 World Cup victories and is a 17-time U.S. national champion. There's so much more. She is currently executive director of the Nordic Ski Association of Anchorage. Kikkan, thank you so much for being here tonight.
My pleasure. So many exciting things to talk about.
Yeah, it's just so much fun. You were in Minneapolis for the Lopet World Cup, working as a commentator for NBC. What was your expectation going into the event, and how do you think it turned out?
Well, it has been 23 years of pent-up excitement. And I mean, 23 years ago was actually my first World Cup. It was in Soldier Hollow, Utah, which was the site of the 2002 Olympic Games. It's a small area, not near a population base. So while we had a few sprinkled U.S. fans on the course, it was a very different atmosphere. And I think with the momentum the U.S. team has had over the last 2 decades, all kind of culminating in Minneapolis. And Minneapolis was actually supposed to hold the World Cup 4 years ago, when 3 days short of their opening ceremony, the world was descending into the pandemic and they had to pull the plug. So I think there was a lot of momentum to come back after that, and it really delivered.
Yeah, it certainly did. Did you expect so many fans? 30,000 by some estimates, and so much enthusiasm.
I mean, I had a feeling that the U.S. was going to show up big, particularly with the team skiing so well this year, but it blew all expectations. And I think what was unique about the course in Minneapolis is it's a golf course. It's in the middle of the city. So it really took that 30,000 people and packed it around the trail, and just the noise level was immense. And what was also really cool and a little bit not anticipated was how well the crowd knew the international field. So even the European racers made some comments that they felt like there was just heart coming from the crowd, even more so than just the noise.
Yeah, it was fantastic to watch it, because I've only seen races in the European races, and so often that's kind of the vibe there. And to see that in Minnesota was really amazing. When did you start thinking about the possibility of holding a World Cup in Anchorage? Was it at the Lopet Cup, or had you been dreaming about this since well before that?
I think imagining a World Cup in Anchorage has been a dream of mine for a long time. When I started to have success in the World Cup back in the mid-2000s, and watching so many of my competitors get a chance to perform on their home turf in front of their fans, their family, made me think, I want to bring this kind of experience back to my hometown that was so crucial for my development. And so started having conversations, but at that point, it had been so long that the International Federation, no one really had the concept of what a U.S. World Cup would look like. So I think over the last decade or so, more and more conversations, better and better results. I think the gold medal in 2018 really did up the ante and get people really thinking about cross-country skiing in the U.S. more than ever. And certainly with a success like Minneapolis last week, I think the possibilities are just opening up.
That's very exciting to hear. Your first Olympic competition was held on U.S. soil in Salt Lake City in 2002. Do you remember feeling some of the same energy then? The U.S. cross-country ski team was in a very different spot in terms of competitiveness that long ago.
Well, I vividly remember my first race at the 2002 Games, and it was a 5K individual start, and I've just planted my poles in the start area. And as I'm about to go, someone yells, "Go East High T-Birds!" And I remember flying out of the gate like I was going to win the race, and then remembering it was 5 kilometers. But yeah, you could really feel that hometown, that so many friends and family were able to come. It just makes it so accessible. And I thought, oh man, this is my first experience. How am I ever going to top that? But I certainly had that same feeling being on the sidelines in Minneapolis and just seeing how so many of the U.S. athletes just kind of came in with confidence and really, I think we're excited to be able to showcase their performance in front of their friends and family.
Yeah, that makes such a big difference, as we heard from Gus. Have you talked with the executive director of the Lopit Cup Foundation about what it took to bring the World Cup to the Theodore Wirth course in Minneapolis and what that may spell for Anchorage?
Yeah, I've actually become really good friends with Claire Wilson, who is the executive director. Actually, of all the places in the United States, the Lopit Foundation really mirrors what the Nordic Ski Association of Anchorage does. They are an organization that does all things cross-country. They groom the trails, they run the programs, they put on big events, and they're doing it all on public land. And that's what we do here in Anchorage. And so I've connected with her early in my role as executive director, and had actually been advising them kind of from an athlete perspective on how important the World Cup experience is in serving the athletes. And so, yeah, it's really come together, and we're both excited to actually form a coalition of venues across the U.S. who could have the potential to host World Cups, because I think the beauty is seeing what worked well in Minneapolis and being able to share that knowledge and look at other potential venues, I think is our best scenario for having World Cups not once every 23 years, but having a World Cup on U.S. soil every other year.
Wow, that's a great and ambitious goal. What would it actually take to get Anchorage there? There's a lot of pieces in place already, it sounds like, but what would it take to actually make this happen?
Well, what's kind of cool is, Anchorage hosted one of the early editions of the World Cup back in 1982. And so we've got a little bit of heritage there. Of course, the World Cup looks a little different today than it did back in the 80s. But, I think we have a lot of infrastructure here in Anchorage that would make it possible from the technical sports side. But when you put on a production that big, you have to think about TV, you have to think about sponsorship. You're bringing the European teams over to Anchorage. So it's certainly a bigger scope. I think, though, the power of doing something like that can be so transformative, even for a venue like Anchorage that has 60 years of heritage, because when you have a big event, that's your reason to invest in your infrastructure. The sport continues to accelerate, and technology is changing all the time. And so to be able to have an example like Minneapolis to draw from, I think certainly having a hometown hero like Gus with the success he's just had gives us all the more reason to try and make it happen. And I think it could be an amazing thing for Anchorage, and I'm excited now to get to work. It's it's definitely one of those visions. It's going to take a while to bring to fruition, but just in some conversations with local city government officials and things, I think there's interest there.
Well, let's entertain that thought. And is Kincaid Park the likely venue? What kind of investment would be necessary to make sure it's ready to host these types of international races?
I think Kincaid certainly makes the most sense. That's where we run the majority of our races out of now. We've got courses that are certified by the International Ski Federation that have to have the appropriate levels of climbing and descending and flats and all those kind of things. I think there's potential to develop those more. The race formats have gone a little bit more towards mass start. You have the sprint events, which continue to get faster and more dynamic. So I think we have some development in our courses there, which if you do that for a World Cup, it then goes to benefit anytime we host a national race, a high school race, even to our citizen races. The scoreboard we have at Kincaid, we got because of the 2001 Special Olympics World Games that came. That was over 20 years ago, and that scoreboard now, you can't find the parts. So we're at a tough position where, we'd love to be able to utilize that, but, it's going to be in some investments and things like that. What was really cool about the Lopit Foundation is about 6 years ago, they built a building called the Trailhead, which has really become kind of the beacon for their programming and everything. And we have the Kincaid Chalet, but it's got a lot of demands from community and various uses. So it hasn't been a full resourced thing available for the Nordic community. And I think if we were going to host the level of a World Cup, we would consider investing in even our chalet, our kind of indoor facilities. And I think that could be something that would benefit Anchorage year round. So yeah, we've got a great canvas to start from. But there certainly would be some investments that I think would bring Anchorage up to the level of hosting a World Cup.
And do you think that there's enough enthusiasm here? One of the things that we heard in putting the show together is that that's part of what it has to be in place is a very enthusiastic local community.
Well, I think there's no shortage of enthusiasm for cross-country skiing here in Anchorage. I mean, we boast some of the biggest junior programs, robust high school teams that are bigger than some of our major national sports. So there's a lot of enthusiasm here, but I do think an event like a World Cup could be that catalyst that really gets everybody fired up and thinking more into the future. We've had potential talks of Olympic bids in the past, and even that potential has spurred investment. And so I think we could bring out community. Now, it would be a great challenge for Anchorage to say Minneapolis drew 30,000 fans per day. We're a city of 300,000. I think we could top that.
Yeah. What do you think it would mean to Anchorage skiers who are currently on the World Cup circuit to be able to race in front of a hometown crowd? We heard Gus reflect on that a little bit, but what are your thoughts? What would it have meant for you?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little jealous because I spent most of my World Cup career toiling away. The closest I ever got was Quebec City, where we had a lot of American fans come up from the eastern United States. But it would be so meaningful for our Alaskan athletes. And those who are veterans, by the time we would be able to get on the World Cup calendar, Gus is gonna be a little bit more developed in his career. At that point, it'd be amazing to showcase where he's at. But I love to think about the opportunity it presents for the development of future champions. We have kids in our Junior Nordic program right now that could be of age to race a World Cup in 4 or 8 years. And so just the idea that a World Cup would be coming to Anchorage could be that difference of, I want to be a good high school skier. No, I want to be a World Cup champion like Gus someday. And then to mention that if we hosted a World Cup, you think about all the kids that are standing in the crowd cheering on. And when they see the speed, the power of these athletes, you can't help but get inspired.
Yeah.
And I know that our American champion, Ted Ligety, native of Park City, credits him being on the side of the course at the 2002 Olympics as a spectator, as a young kid, for igniting his Olympic dream, and he became one of our most successful alpine racers of all time. So I would love to provide that kind of opportunity for our kids here in Alaska to be able to see their heroes up close and just feel inspired to go after such a big dream.
Absolutely. So Gus ran through a lot of the great races here. Your former team, APU, has a strong contingent of young skiers that are just getting started on the world stage. What's it like to watch them compete now?
Well, so Gus's dad used to come on U.S. ski team trips as our team doctor. And I vividly remember him bringing his family to a World Cup in Davos, Switzerland. And I happened to win that day. And Gus and his younger brother, they were about 10 and 8 at the time, and they had these giant bibs on, but we got them out a chance to ski on the course. And they were zigzagging around all these World Cup skiers. And here we fast forward 12 years later, and that little kid in the baggy bib is now on the podium. And so it's been really fun to see these kids who just kind of came around, and you could just see had that playful passion for skiing, but that they've started to believe, and we have the training facilities and resources here to allow them the training it takes to make it up. So it makes me feel tremendously proud. I think the trajectory of U.S. skiing is still has a ton of potential to grow, and I hope we can get more kids on that trajectory.
Oh, I love that story. That's just such a great story. So we're almost out of time, but the Tour of Anchorage gets underway in Anchorage on Sunday. Talk about the importance of this race.
Well, I think what is so special about cross-country skiing as a sport is it's a lifestyle. And it can be done at the highest level where you see the skiers pushing the limits of performance and inspiring us all as representatives of our country. But it's also about everybody out gliding on the snow. And what's wonderful about the Tour of Anchorage is that brings all of it together. It's one of the unique marathon events that actually traverses an urban environment. I think for all of us who live here in Anchorage, it's pretty cool to say we skied from one side of town to the other. And we have our 50K elite field, but we have our 25Kers who have been making this their goal to just make it that far all season. So it brings everybody together. We've had a fantastic winter here in Anchorage, so our trails I think are going to be in top notch, and it's just going to be a fabulous day to get out and be healthy and be together and enjoy the sport of skiing.
So the trails are looking good. We've had such a wild winter here, and snow, melt, snow.
Well, it was interesting to
freezing.
be in Minneapolis where you had snow on the course, mostly
was
man-made,
it.
and that was it.
Yes.
So to come back to Anchorage and see like the snowbanks up high has been good. And I think the fact that we've had so much snow has allowed us to weather the ups and downs. So yeah, I think this is the year to come out and do the tour. Of course, we have skiing and we have a snow bike division as well. And it's just a great day to really enjoy it because, we never know what the future holds.
Right, that's right. Well, thank you so much, Keegan. It was so great to have you come in and talk with us and share these stories. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Whether World Cup events become part of Anchorage's future remains to be seen, but we know that Gus Schumacher's recent victory and all the medals that Keegan Randall, Rosie Brennan, and Sadie Bjornson have brought home to Alaska help highlight Alaska's competitive success and elevate the potential for more fun and exciting ski events being held right here in Anchorage in future years. That's it for this edition of Alaska Insight. Visit our website, alaskapublic.org, for breaking news and reports from our partner stations across the state. While you're there, sign up for a free daily digest so you won't miss any of Alaska's top stories of the day. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Lori Townsend. Good night.